All right, guys. So I'm really pumped up for this next guest because, me and Coach Danny hooked up last year, and he is, in my opinion, changing everything up at Boulder. So we've got Danny Langsdorf, who's the University of Colorado's pass game coordinator and QB coach. Been all over college football, pro football. He's done just about everything, so he's going to be able to give a lot of input. So, Coach, I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I think the best thing to do to start would be kind of just talking us through your journey. You've got, in my opinion, what every, I think, great coach resume looks like, which is you've done it at just about every level. You've been in the NFL, you've been at smaller colleges. Talk to us a little bit about that journey. And, there's a ton of really young college coaches that listen to this thing and maybe are still grinding it out at that first GA job and could use a little encouragement.
It has been. I kind of went a different route in terms. I didn't make all my moves early. I've made them lately, which I'm not sure is a better way to do it. But I had a chance to coach at a Division III school in California after I was done playing college football at Cal Lutheran, and I started my coaching journey then for a season. Then I became a GA at Oregon State. I was there for 2 years. I ended up coaching in the Canadian Football League for 3 years after that. I moved to New Orleans and was a assistant receivers and a quality control for a year. I did assistant receivers and special teams for 2 more. And then I got a coordinator job at Oregon State and lasted 9 years there. From Oregon State, I went to the New York Giants for a season, which was a quick move. I ended up going from New York to be the coordinator at Nebraska, and that lasted 3 seasons. Went to Oregon as an analyst. Went to Fresno State as a quarterback coach, passing game coordinator there. Actually took a job at UNLV for about a month, and then got hired at Colorado. So I've had some jobs, that's for sure. And I think that anytime you make those changes, you kind of take the information you have at the time and try to make the best decision. So for the most part, I don't regret many of those moves, and some of them were forced too. So
yeah. What was that? What was your experience like with the Giants? Because Eli was there at the time, correct?
Yeah, and he had been a 10-year starter.
Yeah.
So that was, I probably got a lot more out of that than he did. He was a veteran Super Bowl winning quarterback. The fortunate thing for me was, we had a new system. He had played in the same system for a long time. And I came in with Ben McAdoo, who was the coordinator. It was a new system coming from Green Bay. It was different footwork. It was fortunate that there were some things that we were implementing that he hadn't done before. So, because what do you go in there and what are you going to give a guy that's won 2 Super Bowls and been in the NFL for that long? So that was a good experience in terms of, implementing a new system, helping a guy kind of change up his footwork and his stance and just doing a little bit of this, fundamental changes, I think that he hadn't done before. So that part of it was good. And it was a learning experience for me, coaching a guy that really was a great preparation, great work ethic, and just a really good guy. It was an easy transition.
What's one of the I heard you mention stance, and what I've been noticing is how much we're starting to see the right foot back in the gun. Whereas, when I was coming up and playing, everything was left foot back. I played with my right foot back my senior year in college, and then when I got to the NFL, Frank Cignetti looked at me and said, what the F are you doing? Basically, right? Let's go ahead and get that left foot back again. But, there were guys starting to do it. Rodgers was one of them. Brady, I think, kind of had I don't want to say started it, but him and McDaniels had really done the right foot back and then put the receiver's outside foot up and elongated some of their quick game. I was watching some of the spring game, and I saw your guys up there playing with the right foot back. Kind of what's for you? What's the advantages versus disadvantages when you kind of look at how we're going to implement the quarterback stance in the gun?
I think the biggest reason, there's probably two reasons for me. One was I didn't want to have different footwork coming from under center than gun, and I teach a punch step from under center. So I wanted that to carry over to the gun. And I believe especially in the quick game, when you have that right foot back for a right-handed quarterback, you're always in kind of a two-step drop mode. Yeah. So you're always in a punch plant mode. And that doesn't change throwing to your right or to your left. So I think basically just comfortability and also the carryover from under center were probably the biggest reasons. As they get into five-step timing drops, you're not really counting that punch step as part of the number like you do in a quick passing game. So it's really the biggest thing probably is the carryover from being under, and a lot of times we're going from under to gun and back under throughout a game. So, the carryover for the drops is good.
I mean, your stuff is fascinating because your stuff is what I've been trying to study this offseason in terms of the way we're going to teach it because, I don't want to say I always feel like we're a year behind, right? We try to study the trends and then teach them because ultimately these kids need to be versed in everything. But you guys are fascinating because you guys, like you just mentioned, are one of the only teams that does it under center as well, which I would assume streamlines it for your quarterbacks to where they're not constantly trying to go back and forth. But it is something that I just think it's so darn cool. And it's so funny, right? Because it's something that I always thought, oh, that's never going to get changed. And all of a sudden it changes on you, right? I'm sure that's how every coach feels. What's, when you guys are, for you guys, because you guys do a fair amount of under center and in the gun, what do you feel like the advantages are of getting under center? I always felt like as a quarterback, I get better extension in my run action and play action. Kind of what's your thought process when you guys get back under center? And I think it's an advantage in running the football, but why do you guys still bounce back and forth? And why do you think it's so successful?
Yeah, I think you answered it with both the run and play action game. I think you're going to have a little bit better fakes. You're going to have the ability to combine, whether you're running outside zone and inside zone or you're running some gap schemes. I think the ball handling from under and the play action game really matches up well. We are a little bit more of a pistol team, so the carryover from under to pistol is good. Teams that are offset gun all the time, a lot of defenses are keying on where that back aligns. So I think there is an advantage to being under and in the home position, kind of in the old school I formations. You don't give away necessarily where the back's going. You have to play both sides. So I think there's good. I think pre-snap identification for defense is important, but also, like you had said, it's a little bit better run action and an extension on the runs.
What a big something that a lot of people make into a big deal is RPO and everything that's going on in college football. I think it gets miscategorized because people are like, oh, that was an RPO. And clearly it was just a give situation. Like it's tough to leave certain guys unblocked and read it. Obviously it expedites a quarterback's learning curve in terms of trying to get him on the field. But what have you kind of noticed is where's it trending just in general college football, the RPO? And then kind of, are you guys integrating it? How are you guys, what kind of advantages do you feel like it gives you as a coach?
Yeah, I think you can handle some unblocked defenders. Some guys that you have trouble getting to, especially roll down safeties. It's not so much for the defensive line; it's really more linebackers and safeties. And we've got a couple different ways we categorize them. Some of them are kind of pre-snap, yes/no decisions. Yeah. and some of them are on the fly. And some of the ones that are on the fly are a little tougher to read. That's not. There's a lot of gray area, I think, for the quarterback, which I don't love because I like dealing in black and white with the quarterbacks. This giving them a yes or no decision or a read that is really simple. And it gets a little trickier in the RPO game. It gets a little gray at times, and some of them are easier than others off of rotation. But I think there's a pretty good trend of having some RPO in your system, in everybody's system, because you do have an advantage. You're able to look like the run. Teams that are fitting the run, get exposed a little bit in the passing game. So I think there's some real advantages to running it, but I think you can overdo it too.
Yeah, I love what you said about the gray area, because I can tell you as a quarterback, I love the gray area because I'm going to pull it every time, right? We're getting a lot of passing yards.
For sure. And I've laughed with our guys because especially the pre-snap RPOs, that if the look is good, I tell them you're crazy not to throw this if you want to throw the ball. If you're a real quarterback, if you're a guy that likes handing the ball off all the time, then okay, but that's not very many good ones. No. So, I think guys are going to be aggressive trying to throw the ball, especially off of good coverage looks. But I'd rather pull the reins back a little bit and make them run the ball. And the offensive line coaches all hate it because they want to run the ball every play. So they get angry when the box looks good and you want to run the ball, but the throw looks even better. So you're throwing it and they're yelling at you, why aren't we running the ball here? So
what's so funny about this is, I was in college, I feel like right when the RPO shift started, and we had the little basic ones like, hey, let's read the apex nickel will, like super easy stuff. And now it's gotten so cool because like you're talking about, people are reading those rotational safeties and people are pulling and throwing glance and bang eights. And I mean, it'd be a fun time to play quarterback right now in college football. What do you think? Obviously, you played quarterback and you've coached it for so long. What do you feel like playing it, though, gives you that edge when you're coaching your guys? Because I always struggled with the guys who, maybe played right guard, and then we're going to tell you kind of how it feels when a scrape is coming off the edge and you need to throw hot. What advantage does it give you just being able to look your guys, and I tell all my guys, all the guys I coach now are 100 times more talented than I was, but at least having seen the same stuff, I feel like it gives me an advantage. What do you feel like when you're coaching those guys, just the fact that you played, how does that help you?
Yeah, I think the overall experience playing the position helps. It's probably more of a credibility deal with the guys I'm coaching than anything. But I think that the fact that I maybe have experienced something that I'm teaching, and I might say, might have a story or might have an example of something that I went through to help, to kind of help push the point along. And I don't try to go back very much and well, this is how I did it. I think it's a little bit more of, hey, I know what you're going through, or you might feel like this DN that's surfing is a guy that you can't pull the ball on and run some zone read, but trust me, you're faster than that guy. You can do this. Just try it. So I think maybe just some examples of trying something or maybe an experience that I've had is helpful. But I would say probably just the overall fact that I've had some experience, probably helps the credibility factor in teaching it.
Now, I would assume that you guys are somewhat in that eval period now that spring's done. What is it that you guys are looking for? I guess it's kind of twofold. What is it that CU is looking for in a high school kid that, hey, we want to add this guy to our board? What are some traits that you guys are really looking for? And then what's something that kind of you're looking for your guys to improve in the off season?
I think the eval period is really important, and it's different than this year and than years past. The fact that we aren't on the road, usually May is last 2 weeks in April And the month of May is a 6-week eval period where you're going to spring practice. You're watching kids, whether you're able to work them out or you're watching them at practice, you're at camp. It's really an important time. And without us being able to do that, it's been tricky. It's been a lot of film work, which has always been something you've done, but you can kind of back it up with seeing them work out live. We're looking for, first off, a guy that's an accurate thrower. I think that highlights are great. You can get a feel for what a guy looks like, but when you watch the game and he's spraying the ball all over the place, that's hard to feel good about. So I think the accuracy piece is really important. I've learned through the years they really come in all different shapes and sizes. I've had tall, skinny, lanky guys that are really good, and I've had short, fat guys that can win games too. So I think that it's trying to get the right fit for what your style and your system is. And it's not an exact science. I mean, it's the reason Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round. We make mistakes too. I think that the difficult thing about recruiting is quarterbacks, you're only usually taking one. Yeah. And there might be, a really good player that maybe is even in your backyard, let's say, and those are the guys you want to try to keep at home. But you also might have a guy that's from a long ways away that commits to you, and you feel good about it, and you're kind of done. It's tricky recruiting quarterbacks these days, especially the fact that they are entering that portal crazy. You almost have to recruit two nowadays because you're going to lose one. But But anyway, I think having a guy that is a good fit for your system, that can athletic to give you some pocket movement or even run with the ball, but they also have to make the throws. That's kind of what we're looking for is a dual threat guy. If they're only one element to their game, whether they're a real good runner, a real good passer, they have to be exceptional because they're going to be a little bit one dimensional that way. I think you'd like to have a guy that can do a little bit of both for sure. If you look at our quarterbacks, I've really been pleased with the spring, their development. I think they are doing a much better job kind of overall understanding what we're trying to do. Fundamentals have always been a really big deal to me, both in footwork, ball handling. Once we get to college, we're not changing guys' motions too much. That's too far down the road. So if they have a good, clean, not too crazy of a motion, I think that's what I like. Just a natural thrower, and then we're going to really work hard on the footwork and the ball handling fundamentals once we get them.
Yeah, because I think footwork's such a cool deal because, in all honesty, right, there's certain things you can do fundamentally to create depth in a drop, but ultimately it's going to be tied to your system, right? There's things that, I would assume a CU quarterback has to do that, hey, a kid at Oregon's not going to get asked to do, and vice versa. And that's what I do think is so cool about how you guys teach it, because it seems like it's so specific to certain route combinations, which I would assume help your quarterbacks play with confidence. When you're looking at these young guys, I guess because there's probably a ton of young QBs listening to this, what's something that a kid can do, maybe not for CU specifically, but when he's going to a summer camp, what's something he can do to kind of stand out, but at the same time, it's not like a turnoff for a coach? Because something that I've been seeing is like these guys, these kids that they tag like a million college coaches on Twitter. I would assume that your Twitter notifications are turned off at this point with how often you get tagged. What's something that maybe they can do that's a proactive step, but it doesn't feel like it's bogging, it bogs you down as a coach? What's something maybe a kiddo could do from that aspect?
Yeah, I think, I've liked the fact that guys have put together some films, even a short highlight or maybe a workout tape. I don't think those are bad things. I get so many of them. There sometimes needs to be a little bit of a hook for me. I could spend all day pouring through these videos, that'd be a full-time job. So I need a little bit of a connection or maybe a high school coach, that says, hey, you might want to take a look at this guy. Obviously a kid that's had success, from their program is helpful to kind of say, oh, this guy's doing some good stuff. I should take a look at him. I think the camp circuit's always tricky. I think in my experience, if I have a kid that's from Rhode Island that shows up that I have no idea about, he's going to really have to stand out to, nothing against Rhode Island, but he's going to have to stand out to me to have any type of, I guess what am I trying to say? Any type of connection to, because there's a lot of kids that would just kind of show up, and if you have some idea of a place, a high school kid wants to go to school at a certain place, I think that being proactive and going to their camp or getting in touch with their coaches is a good thing to kind of get the ball rolling. But I think there needs to be kind of coming at different angles, whether it's through a direct message or an email or a phone call from the coach, kind of get the ball rolling and then show up at camp. That makes a little bit more sense to me to know that, okay, this kid's going to come to our camp and I know a little bit about him. I think those are always helpful in terms of recruiting.
Yeah, what we always try to tell the guys too is make sure the high school coach is on board, because ultimately those guys are going to have a really good feel of whether or not the kid can play at a certain level. Yeah. And I think it's got to be a tough situation if you're trying to navigate that as a college coach. If, hey, the high school coach isn't vouching for it, that's a tough kid to go ahead and not. It just, to me, that's got to be a tough thing to navigate. With the college camp, how big of a challenge was that, not being able to see these kids in person last year? Because I know what you're saying about, hey, I can only take one quarterback. I always find it interesting, right? Because quarterbacks sometimes get frustrated. They're like, hey, my right tackle got offered just on his film. Why does coach want to see me throw in person? And it's like, well, because they're going to take 4 tackles, right? It's a little different deal. So how hard was that to have to make some of these decisions without that in person, whether it be a workout or the kid being able to come to camp last year?
Yeah, extremely hard. For many years, we wouldn't even take a kid without seeing him throw live, and we were forced. I had never done that before last year. We took Drew Carter out of Tigard, Oregon, and luckily I had seen him as a sophomore. So he hadn't even been on campus. We're signing a kid, almost sight unseen, basically. Yeah. Now, I had a little history with him, and I knew his high school coach, and there was a lot more to it than that, but it was extremely difficult. And you're right about, you're going to take 4 or 5 tackles or 4 or 5 offensive linemen. It's a totally different deal than taking one kid at one position. So, we're going through that right now a little bit too, of not being able to see these kids. Now they're going to open this thing up in June, which would be really big for us to be able to work a kid out and have them at camp, kind of get back to normal. But it's been difficult. There's definitely, it's made it, you really have needed to kind of have a connection, and your pool has shrunk down because you're just not able to go everywhere and see these guys, and you're really needing to narrow the thing down to who you can really manage. Going back to what you said about the high school coach, I think you're exactly right. I spend very little time dealing with some dad, some guy that says, well, my kid's really good. I'm not going to put a lot of stock into that, So I think you definitely have to have the high school coach on board. Guys like you and what you're doing with the quarterback training is really big, because you see a lot of different kids and have an idea what we're looking for. That's helpful. But, I think that the high school coaches and the guys that are training kids, I think those are valuable resources to get at least a start on looking at a kid in an area.
Yeah. And I think what you said is so true, because I do think, and this was my fear when they were pushing football in Colorado, when they were trying to push to the spring in Colorado specifically. My fear was football's so special because the high school coach is critical to this, right? And I appreciate, all the relationships we have, but at the end of the day, I think a guy who sees him every day in the hall, it's so critical to the kind of character the kid has. A kid can show up and see me 6 times a month and be a good kid, right, for an hour window, and then I'd have no idea. Whereas these high school guys, they see him interacting, and my fear was when they were going to push football was that it turns into basketball, right? Where then all of a sudden the high school gets removed from it and it turns into the club deal. So I'm happy that football's back and they're doing all the right stuff, because I do think, I played for Joe Johnson, who's been in Colorado forever. And it was the best experience of my life because the dude teaches you how to win football games, right? Whether you like him or not, he can hold you accountable and teach you how to win football games, which I think is just, I think it's important for young people to learn. But so the big thing that I'd love for you to try to elaborate on, what's the one, obviously the NFL guys are rich, but what's the one thing that you pulled away, the difference between coaching a guy who's an NFL quarterback and then the difference between trying to coach some of these, 18, 19, 20-year-old college kids? What are those two give us a glimpse of just the difference that those are.
I think the biggest thing is it's a job in the NFL. I mean, that's their 9-to-5 job, to come to work and the workout, the film study, all of that is a job, and they know how important it is. There's not a lot of motivational speaking. I mean, you're not gonna have to rally to have a kid be prepared to be ready to play in the NFL. That's a given, and if they're not doing that, they have no chance. So, yeah. I think that's part of it. I think the relationship. You're a little bit more of a mentor probably in college in terms of setting an example or kind of teaching them how to manage their time and what to look for, and there's a lot more of the mentorship, I think, than in the NFL. Those guys, they don't need the same instruction. They're going to need help with maybe scheme, maybe game planning. In the NFL, like you do in college, but in college there's a lot more. It's fundamental part of it. Plus, they're college students, so they're spending time on the hill or doing other things than just football. So I think there's a big difference that way. You're not having Eli Manning worried about what he's doing on Friday night and the fact that he hadn't watched enough of the next opponent. That's not even a factor. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. But you're also in a relationship where it's kind of you're kind of in a co-op. You're working together.
Yeah.
You're getting his input on the game plan, what he likes and what he saw, as opposed to a college kid that's probably going to do a little bit more listening and just kind of saying, okay, that sounds good, let's do that. But those are probably the biggest differences, I would say, between the pro and the college game.
Yeah, what I thought was so interesting, that's what I did think was so interesting when I got to St. Louis, was how much impact that quarterback room had on the game plan. And it was like you're saying, because ultimately, Bradford was in year 6 when I was there. Kellen Clemens had spent it felt like 4 decades in the NFL by the time I got there. So there were guys that just, their football IQ was to the moon. So you want their input. That was a fascinating room. I tell everybody, I learned so much by just sitting around and absorbing and not saying anything like you do as a rookie. You just keep your mouth shut and hope they don't figure out and cut you. So that's what I was doing. So, and I'll let you go because I know you got a ton of stuff. Kind of the last thing for me, you've been everywhere in college football. Obviously, Boulder's a special place. I got a chance to go up there a couple of years ago and look at the new facilities that they were doing. What to you makes CU special? What's kind of, what's been since you've been up there for a year now, obviously COVID, you can't go to as many restaurants as you probably like to, but what's been your first impressions and kind of what makes Boulder special?
It's a fabulous place. It's a beautiful campus. It's a really nice community. It's safe. It's a little bit of a small town feel, but there's enough to do both in Boulder and Denver. So our kids stay busy. They like that. They love the outdoors. Whether you like to just be out in the weather in the sun, hiking, fishing. There's just a lot to do here, and it's a clean, quiet community. We can get kids out of the inner city that think, man, I'm in the middle of the mountains here, but yet you can still have the same kind of activities to do in a big city if you want to go to Denver. I think that part of it's unique. Some of the small college towns that I've been in, there's not a ton to do. There might be some parties on the weekend or something, but I think that you have to kind of sell to what your place emphasizes. And our place is a beautiful campus. It's got great facilities, and there's lots to do, and it's nice that way. I've been really pleased with even my little guys. They're outside all the time, and they love it here. They think the sun's out all the time. And you'll have a couple snowy days here and there, but for the most part, the weather's great. So there's a lot to sell here. There's a lot of it's a great place. Probably the best place I've lived in my coaching journey. I know my wife and I've both felt, we've talked about that many times, that this has been our best place, and it's a place that even when I'm done coaching that I consider living in. And so that part of it, it's easy to live here, I guess, is the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, I was, I got a bunch of family out in Clovis, so Fresno State's right down the street. And I tell you what, your back hurts a little bit more here from the snow, but I'm sure you could do without the 120 degree days in the summer. So
no doubt. And it's, you don't have the humidity of New Orleans, and you don't have the clouds and the dreary rain of Oregon. I mean, it's a great place to live.
So, Coach, I appreciate you. Based on how spring ball went, I'm assuming we'll have you back on to preview you guys getting ready for the college football playoff. So we'll get you back on. But, Coach, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good deal. Appreciate you having me too.